David Clyde occupies a unique space in baseball history. He was one of the most highly touted baseball prospects of all time. He was also one of the most mismanaged prospects of all time. The term cautionary tale usually precedes the story of his rise with the fledgling Texas Rangers. David Clyde was born in Kansas City, Kansas in 1955. His family moved to Houston, Texas, where he would attend West Chester High School. This is the part where I'd usually use the word standout. David Clyde was a pitching child prodigy with a national reputation. David cemented himself as West Chester's ace as a freshman. As a sophomore, he tossed a perfect game against the defending Texas state champions. As a junior, he put together a 17-1 record with 248 strikeouts in 121 innings pitched and a .16 ERA. That year, he threw 3 no-hitters and 4 one-hitters. There was a buzz that if David had been eligible, he'd have been selected in the 1972 draft. His senior year, David Clyde went 18-0 with a .18 ERA, 328 strikeouts. On May 29, 1973, basically the entire Rangers camp, including owner Bob Short, GM Joe Burke, manager Whitey Herzog, and pitching coach Chuck Estrada, were in attendance for a David Clyde no-hitter in a state tournament quarterfinal game. Any and all doubts they had in David's mid-90s fastball and filthy curveball had been rectified that day. The following week, on June 5th, TV trucks from across Texas lined the streets near David's home, and as expected, the Rangers selected him. The Rangers also selected pitcher Lynn Barker in the 3rd round. He'd go on to pitch the 10th perfect game in MLB history with the Indians in 1981. Other notable names from this draft were all-time greats such as Dave Winfield, Eddie Murray, Robin Yount, and the 477th pick, an outfielder from southeastern Oklahoma State named Ronald Reagan, who went to the Cincinnati Reds. As far as I can tell, no baseball writer has been able to dig up the genealogy to know if he was kin to the Ronald Reagan or not. Anyway, David's father Gene handled negotiations with Bob Short, and David signed on for a $65,000 bonus, a $22,500 salary, and a $7,500 roster bonus. The Clydes went into this process hoping David would get his shot in the majors within 3 years. To their surprise, he was on the 40-man roster by the end of the month of June. In the past, there had been some anomalies when rosters would be depleted due to war, such as Joe Nuxhall absurdly starting a game for the Reds at 15 years old in 1944, as well as Putsy Caballero playing third base for the Phillies at age 16 that same year, among others. I honestly just wanted to say Putsy Caballero. The bonus baby system of signing players, an institution of the past that was replaced by the draft in the 60s, also created some young debuts. I feel like it's important to paint a picture of just how hopeless things felt in Arlington, Texas, the summer of 1973. This was just the Rangers' 2nd year in Texas after leaving Washington and dropping the Senator's name. Success on the field, or lack thereof, was a direct carryover. There was little to no star power on the roster besides an aging Frank Howard. The reputation remained from writer Charles Dryden's legendary phrase, Washington, first in war, first in peace, and last in the American League. Attendance only averaged around 8,000 in 1972 and was even less in the spring of 1973 after the iconic Ted Williams had stepped down as the team's manager. Bob Short had deployed every promotional night he could think of, including Hot Pants Night, with little to no noticeable returns. Quite frankly, he was flat broke. Short chose to override new manager Whitey Herzog, who wished to slowly develop David Clyde as a future cornerstone of the franchise. In what he thought was a compromise, Herzog agreed to pitch David Clyde 2 games, then send him to the minors to refine his craft. I suppose Short just couldn't say no to this young hometown hero lining his pockets. On June 27, 1973, 6 days removed from his senior prom, 20 days removed from his last high school pitch, wearing number 32 in homage to his hero Sandy Koufax, David Clyde would get the start against the Minnesota Twins. The game was delayed because of the literal circus Bob Short created. There was a pre-game celebration that could only be replicated in Charlie Finley's wildest dreams that included hula dancers, a papier-mâché giraffe on wheels, multiple costume characters, and 2 lion cubs. A standing room-only crowd of 35,698 were on hand, marking the first Texas Rangers sellout. David started the game by walking the first 2 batters, then striking out the side. 5 innings and 112 pitches later, Clyde had walked 7 and struck out 8, surrendering his only hit to Mike Adams, a 2-run homer. Bill Gogolewski would go the rest of the way to secure Clyde's first career win. Clyde's second start, also at home, against the White Sox would see him face the minimum through 4 innings and leave the game in the 6th with a blister on his pitching hand. The Rangers were winning 4-3, but the bullpen blew the game. Blister issues would persist that season, and hitters would eventually sit on his fastball as he had yet to develop more of an off-speed arsenal. Contrary to Bob Short's promise to Herzog, Clyde never got sent to the minors, and Herzog was fired that September and replaced by Billy Martin. Here's Clyde's perspective on that point in his career.
When Billy took over, I got caught in a power play. Billy really didn't want me there for whatever reasons. Those were his. He's the manager. He's entitled to those reasons or opinions. I have no problem with that. But I was suffering because of those decisions. Billy didn't like young players. I was a young player, strike 1. Billy didn't like pitchers. I was a pitcher, strike 2. And maybe the biggest strike against me, and like I said, I didn't ask to be put in this situation. It just so happened it was a perfect storm. Billy wanted to be the star. He wanted to be the ringmaster. And because of the situation at that time, I was. Didn't ask for it, but, I wasn't going to shy away from it either. There were a lot of things that transpired that, like I said, I got down on myself and maybe at times didn't take the best care of myself. But on the other hand, when I wanted to work on my craft and try to get better, I wasn't allowed to.
He experienced a shoulder issue in spring training of '76. He'd resurface with the Cleveland Indians in 1978. The Indians traded Clyde back to the Rangers in 1980, but shoulder problems persisted once again. He spent 9 months recovering and driving a beer truck until he got his final shot with the Astros, mostly at AA Tucson. He announced his retirement from baseball in 1982. He sat at just 37 days shy of his service time requirement for Major League pension. MLB agreed to provide him with a stipend in 2011, which falls under $9,000 a year. Despite how his career played out, Clyde claims he doesn't regret a thing and spends a lot of his time giving back, training and advising young players, going full circle, providing a service he wishes he had had more of in his early days. In the case of David Clyde, a 1 in a million arm, more natural talent than nearly anyone in the history of the game, many claim to be looking out for his best interest. But talk is cheap. If Clyde was taken by another organization who nurtured his talent, he'd have easily become a legend. It reminds me of how we treat our vast natural resources in this country. The North American model for conservation was the first of its kind in the whole world. Public land that is accessible to everyone, not just the elite. It exists in perpetuity, and this is a system we kinda just lucked into. Big game hunters, including but not limited to a one Teddy Roosevelt, came to the realization that the species they hunted for sport and sustenance were not unlimited. So they decided hunting should be regulated, and excise taxes from hunting equipment should be set aside to manage the species in question. This also generated funding for wild lands for them to occupy that would be federally protected from development. This land is my land, this land is your land, that whole thing. This year we have taken a significant step back in the form of thousands of at-will firings of employees of the National Park Service, the USDA Forest Service, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Essentially a who's who of the people who are trained to manage millions of acres of land and the flora and fauna that inhabit said land. People just like myself, your friendly neighborhood fish biologist of West Virginia's District 5. I'm still employed so far, but these drastic federal measures have made state governments bold to such ideations as well, so I'm waiting on a decision on West Virginia House Bill 208, which would strip me of my civil service status, and basically I could be fired and replaced by a political hire. It doesn't take a scientist to know that isn't beneficial for science. I have a degree in this, and I truly know what's best for West Virginia's rivers. Whether it's a mid-90s fastball or the breathtaking natural areas here in America, you don't know what you've got until it's gone. Take it easy.